The Whistler's Cabin. Ethan awoke with a start, eyes snapping open in the pitch-black stillness. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then the musty scent of damp cedar and memories came flooding back, the remote wilderness cabin his brother had raved about for unwinding and getting away from it all. After convincing Ethan to join him for a weekend of hiking and camping, his brother had to bail at the last minute for work. So here Ethan was alone, miles from the nearest town or another living soul. He sighed deeply, pulling the scratchy wool blanket tighter as the realization set in that something had roused him from such a deep slumber. The cabin was deathly silent now. No critters scurrying in the walls, no trees creaking in the wind. Just an unnerving void of absolute quiet amplifying every slight rustle of fabric and creak of old timber as Ethan shifted on the cot. That's when his breath caught in his throat. A faint, haunting whistle pierced the stillness from somewhere outside, a thin, wavering tone that rose and fell like alternating voices, ethereal and unnatural in a way that caused the hairs on the back of Ethan's neck to stand on end. Steeling himself, Ethan rose and pulled on his boots, before peering out the grimy cabin window. In the inky blackness of the moonless forest night, he couldn't make out anything out of the ordinary. But the chilling melody drifted through the pines once more, closer now, as if whatever was making that sound was slowly being drawn towards the cabin. A chill raced down Ethan's spine as his heart rate quickened. This had to be some kind of sick joke his brother was playing on him, right? He moved to light the aged wooden stove and banish the smothering shadows, but there was no kindling left to burn. Only the flashlight on his phone provided any illumination to scan the barren interior and find something, anything, to use as a makeshift weapon. Ethan grasped the rusted old fireplace poker as another shrill whistle split the air, this time unmistakably closing in right outside the cabin walls. His hands trembled violently as dread made his legs turn to rubber. Those thin, alternating notes swirled and reverberated around the cabin as if multiple unseen entities were encircling just beyond the tree line, luring their intended target outdoors to be consumed by the velvety night. Despite the punishing chill in the air, Ethan felt sweat beading on his forehead. He shone the flashlight beam near the door where the sounds seemed to be congregating, nearly dropping the light in shock when it glinted off something sleek and metallic jutting from the wall just above eye level. An old brass horn extended from a fist-sized hole in the warped wood, like some kind of intricate instrument meant for channeling sounds. More whistling notes crept forth from the strange device, low and guttural now, undulating with the occasional trill of higher frequencies. Ethan fought to control his ragged breathing as the hellish orchestra grew more frenzied outside, whipping around the ramshackle cabin in a tempest of dissonant howls. Rancid odors of decaying vegetation and wormed earth wafted in through the cracks now, clawing at Ethan's nose as he backed away in revulsion. With a deafening shriek, the horn suddenly unleashed a torrent of putrid black ichor that sprayed like a ruptured gasket across the far side of the room. Ethan cried out, frantically shielding his face as the vile substance splattered in streaks across his jacket and jeans, filling his mouth with the taste of rotted foliage and spoiled meat. He spat and gagged on the foul secretion, scrubbing it off with his hands as fast as he could, nearly hyperventilating. Through panicked tears blurring his vision, Ethan could see the rancid eruption had coated half the room in a glistening layer of ooze that seemed to reek worse with every passing second. Another series of multiphonic whistles pierced the cabin from new openings now, as if the entire structure was slowly becoming an elaborate conduit for the entity surrounding it. More tarnished horns sprouted like malevolent fungi through the bark siding and antler trophies mounted over the mantelpiece. Ethan heaved and lurched through the rancid miasma, terror overtaking him as pulsating rivulets began creeping along the floor towards his feet. Any second now they would sweep in and pull him under the foul tide. With a guttural cry, he lunged for the front door. The rusted iron handle fought him with every savage tug, refusing to turn in the frame. Behind him, the whistling built to a deafening crescendo of layered arpeggios, more horns rupturing from the roof and expelling bursts of sludge into the stagnant air. Ethan spun around wildly, his only means of escape rapidly being sealed by a rising torrent of vile secretions. Then, mercifully, the ancient door wrenched free from its hinges with a final Herculean effort, spilling Ethan out the entrance and onto the ground with a bone-jarring thud. He scrambled up and staggered away in sheer panic, the haunting wind-like whistles swirling all around and pursuing his retreat. It sounded as if the entire forest itself was opening in a gaping maw, moaning out eldritch melodies to lure him deeper into its hungering gullet. Ethan didn't dare look back as he tore through the pines, tripping over rocks and roots until he reached the game trail they had hiked in on. For the next several miles he ran in a wild feverish sprint, crashing through underbrush and swarming mosquitoes until he finally collapsed, chest heaving, somewhere down the path. As the first light of dawn sifted through the canopy, Ethan let out a ragged cry of despair when he finally looked down at himself. Every exposed inch of his skin was now coated in that same black ooze, glistening and viscous, sinking into his pores as if being slowly absorbed. He tore off his soiled clothes and scrubbed at his body in vain, only managing to smear the corruption over more of his flesh. Each breath drew the noxious rot deeper into his lungs until he could taste it on his tongue and deep in his gut, bloating him from within. When the forest rangers found him a few days later, Ethan was curled up and whimpering on the side of the trail. He gibbered mindlessly about being devoured by the trees, his ruptured form little more than a distended balloon of reeking biomatter in the final stages of being broken down and digested. Those woodsmen claimed they'd seen a lot of disturbing sights over the years, from industrial spills to ritualistic animal sacrifices by cults, but none of it compared to the horrors they pried loose from that decaying husk and the garbled fragments of his tail that they pieced together between his wails of abject misery. Not even Ethan knew that the cabin his brother had stumbled upon was once a squalid outpost for a deranged 19th-century sect of druid nature worshippers who revered the whims of dark sylvan spirits they believed dwelled in those ancient pines. Spirits that demanded their piped sacrificial hymns be forever whispered to lure in fresh tributes for the forest's endless hunger. The truth was even those misguided initiates never discovered just how literally the entity they beckoned interpreted their twisted ritualistic feedings to the land, until it was far too late.